What's going on, everybody? To Boss Up Talks, episode 106. We've been doing it for 106 weeks, which is very consistent. You don't understand how hard it is to show up consistently sometimes with things going on. So, super dope week. So we always like to start off with something positive. So, Natalie, what is like your praise report, or what's what are your aha moments of the week? What's been like kind of going on with you?
So my first praise report is I had the audacity to come here with no makeup on. Okay. Bare face, y'all, getting all of this good dark spots under the eyes, and I'm embracing it and I'm loving it, and I ain't got nothing to worry about because the content is about to do what the content does, which is hit you all in the right spot. So I'm excited about that. And I was just telling Chef Jay earlier that I have finally, after being prophesied to, my husband says it all the time, I have finally decided that I am ready to pivot. And I want to pivot into assisting corporate companies with vision alignment, vision
Mm,
realignment. And so if you are working at a company and you've been listening to your girl and you're like, Natalie, you need to come help us out. We need help when it comes to that. You better go ahead and holler at your girl, because I would definitely love to come into your company and help realign your team, your executive leadership with the vision of the company. Because when you have a vision, like I know that according to Simon Sinek, when you focus, when the company is vision focused, the
mm,
growth follows. The
that's
growth
good.
follows vision. And so it's not the desire to make a lot of money. It's not the fact, the management and all of that other stuff. All of that amplifies it. But when you focus on the vision, making sure that that vision is aligned and it comes to pass, then growth follows. So that's it.
That's good. That's good. Coming to the marketplace. I like that you said about the whole thing about the makeup part. I feel like sometimes we have to be so perfected to do the things that we're called to do when it's just like, just do it. I realize that the more I just jump, everything that needs to happen will happen as I soar. I think sometimes we're like in the mindset of everything has to be perfect, but sometimes you waste your whole life trying to reach perfection when people want you just for who you are. And secondly, I love that into the corporate space because I feel it is the shift to move into different avenues. I think sometimes we get just stuck with thinking that we're supposed to just stay here when God is like, all right, you was there, let's move on. Because you accomplished that. I think sometimes we try to linger longer than we have to with things that are accomplished. Like we did it. I think just with education, I feel like I have lingered longer than I had to certain times because I did trust the plan of God for my life. But sometimes some things are just comfortable to us because we know we're great at it already. So it's easy to stay in places where it's meant to transition out of. My testimony for week, I'm just in the mode of gratitude. I realize how grateful I am just every single day. I'm learning to just stop and just enjoy the moment, rest in the moment, rest in what God has done. Like I already know God is gonna do whatever He's gonna do. Like I'm never any fear about that. I'm learning just to be in peace. And just let God do his big one. Like, I think that's the biggest part about it is I'm never worried about if he's gonna do it, it's just when. And it's my job just to rest in it. So I'm entering into rest. I'm excited about this new year because next year I'll be 35. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's the next big year for me. So what does that look like? I had certain goals that I had set for already for 35. So now I'm excited to see everything come to fruition because I know it is my $1 million year. Um, and I'm just happy because I think that going into a new year, we always have goals and dreams and different things that we want to see happen. But I think the biggest thing that we don't take time to do, we want to be a winner, but what is the heart of a winner looks like? Uh, something that me and Halim have been talking about is just making sure as we go into these different spaces, we're making sure that our heart is right because elevation is always going to happen, right? When you work hard, elevation comes. But the thing about it is I've noticed that people that I've seen elevate, their heart structure changes where it's like, there was always great, but you see them start cutting corners, you see them start being like everybody else. And as you go to your road to success, you realize that hey, God, let me stay true to myself, because I want to make sure I have the proper heart of a champion, that whatever I do, I'm representing you. Whatever I do, I want my heart to be right. There are a lot of people who are successful on the outside, but their heart is not right. So at what cost are you looking to get success? Because I think that's the biggest thing that changes. I'm like, I don't want to stop my dedication to prayer, my dedication to helping people out, my dedication towards sowing seeds, because I feel like I've arrived, and I forget what it took me to get there. And it took me, okay, no, I got to pray and meditate day and night. I got to read my word. I got to actually practice love. I got to practice just my minds. I got to practice being nice to people, because sometimes when people get to that point of what we're trying to get to with coaching and things of that nature, they forget about who God wanted them to be and the gift that God has given them. It becomes I versus, hey, thank you, but I give all glory to God kind of vibe. So that's what the biggest thing too, is like how to keep the heart of a champion and going into the next year, making sure your heart structure is always on the up and up.
I love that you brought that to the forefront, because I too have had that experience where you see people, grow when it comes to their finances, and then their heart is positioned differently. And I've always wanted to, this is one of the reasons why I never desired wealth in the past. Is because I never wanted to be that particular person. I remember reading a Bible verse or reading a scripture and saying, you know what, I'd rather be poor with Jesus than have money without Jesus. And so I decided to go side with poverty, which is in direct opposition to who Christ is. Christ is wealth, right?
Mm,
He comes from wealth. He exudes it. It's his being. I mean, so much so that when he was born, just the baby who never did anything, who never accomplished anything, who never said a word, right? He probably did the little cuckoo or whatever. Wise men came and brought him gifts, and one of those gifts included gold, bags and bags and bags of gold. So if
yeah.
they could see his intrinsic value of being wealthy, why am I deciding to side with poverty, which has nothing to do with Jesus? And so just seeing the and I think it's very disproportionate, to be honest with you. We see a lot of wealthy people, we are given that particular paradigm or structure, that mental structure, right, from the world, from the culture. We see the ditties highlighted more than the people
Yeah.
that are actually loving God and doing, making money and doing well. We see the people who say, like, for instance, Oprah. I don't know what Oprah's belief systems are, but I know there was one point where she said, Jesus can't be the only way. There's got to be other multiple ways, right? And I know I've said that in my lifetime too. Am I going to be judged based on something that I said in my past? I don't know. But I'm
Mm,
saying we've seen people in that position with wealth, and then we automatically assume, because the culture, they polarize this thing so much that, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that. And when you say, I don't want to be that, sometimes many people say, I don't want to be rich. They
mm,
exclude the bad part of it, and they say, I don't want to be rich, instead of doing what you did, Chef Jay, looking inward and examining their own heart to say, do I have the foundation, right? Do I have the right foundation that even when I become wealthy, I'm not going to change certain values about myself? I'm not going to change the fact that I love serving people. I'm not going to change in the area of, I believe integrity and business should coincide. Do I, you know what I mean? Like, do they take the time? And I know that for the majority of entrepreneurs, to be honest, the ones that I have now encountered, because I've decided I'm going to change my circle, they're always checking their heart posture, even if they're
yeah.
not Christians. It's kind of crazy. They're always checking their heart posture. They're always checking their heart posture when it comes to the value that they provide. They're always trying to connect. As we grow, are we still connected to the values that we established when we were smaller, or are we moving away from those values? And so I really believe that that is the foundational part in growing your wealth and maintaining it and multiplying it, is starting with, where am I internally? Where is my heart internally? And I'm like, we just started off diving into the deep, Coach Chef Jay. Let's do it.
So good. what happens is, I think when you start checking your heart posture daily, you start to make changes. It's like what we talked about last year about failing fast, where when you're checking your heart posture daily, you get to really make those changes ASAP. Where if you never like checking yourself, if you're never doing daily reflections, it's very easy for you to fall off. In the scripture, James verse 1, verse 2 through 4, it says, "Consider pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds." I think every day life presents trials to us, but it's about how you handle it. Like, you know what? Instead of saying if it's not one thing, it's another, it's more so like, I'm grateful I get to go through this learning opportunity for me to grow, because trials come to make you grow. Um, just like this whole, like, I faced so many trials in teaching, it's ridiculous. Where, as much as I loved what I did, I think it was so many opportunities for me to really just like give up and quit, versus just like, nope, what is it meant for, what is it meant for you to get at this opportunity, right? Like, I never thought that um I would be like kind of teaching, and then I'm actually trying to better like my classroom and go to for my master's, that it would be something that's viewed as negative, because people don't understand the process. Like, for me, I know God has given me a gift to grow and work with young people. I know that hands down. And I think too, because I know the goal is so great that there's going to be opposition. So I think the first thing when you're planning on a future, just know that if you're planning about to prosper and to do certain goals and dreams, you're going to have trials and tribulations. That's like a no-brainer. But I think through the process of going through, you always have to check your heart posture, because sometimes you could be doing a great work, but sometimes things will come and taint it, right? Like, I had to realize too, with certain plans I'm working on now, I'm like, hey, go back to the reason why you're doing this. Because when you go back to why, you start to realize, consider it pure joy when you go through trials and tribulations, because it's a moment for you to grow. And that means that if you never had a trial or tribulation, that means that are you doing something that's really worth your time? Because when you're destined for something great, you're gonna have opposition. It's an automatic thing. Like, when you're persistent to do something greater, you're gonna have opposition. But sometimes the opposition is a distraction to prevent you from realizing that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to learn. It's an opportunity for grow. But when you're so focused on the pain of something versus the learning opportunity, it becomes something of a burden. I realize that sometimes when you're like a servant leader and you're always willing to serve, there are things that will get on your nerves and make you dread what you do. I mean, one time, like, there's a few times, like, I dreaded teaching. And it's something I love to do. Like, I love teaching. I love working with young people. But then there's this like stupidity, and I hate to say it like that, but stupidity with, administrations or powers that be, that makes your job harder than it has to be. And I realized that, hey, Josh, and I will always have to say, Josh, why are you really here? Because you know that God has called you to work with a lot of young people in this particular school. So you have to be mindful that no matter how I feel, I don't want to miss fulfilling my assignment because I'm aggravated by things that won't mean nothing tomorrow. Like, there are things that we're going to do today that may seem so magnified, but literally in a day, a week, a year, it becomes so minute that you realize that, man, like, I was really bothered by that, knowing that the goal was so great. These little problems will come into your life, and it will cause you to start hating what you do, go into depression, make you gain weight and stress eat, make you get snappy with people and your loved ones. When it's like, it's not their fault. You have to manage what God is giving you to make the fruit of it. When God gave them the talents, he said, hey, I gave everyone a different amount. So the thing about it is too, we're all given what we need to give. It's not much that we can bear, but it's just about how we bear it. I think that once we become managers or good seers of what we have, we start to see differently, because what is hard today will be easy tomorrow, or it could be harder tomorrow depending on your outlook. So let's not make stuff harder than what it has to be.
So I gotta come behind what you just said. Oh my gosh. Let's not make stuff harder than what it has to be. And there is one thing I'm learning, right? I love that how you ended that. Because one thing I am learning, there is a simplicity that comes with doing business and doing it well. That we think it's supposed to be very complex and complicated and so many running. Like when you enter into business, a lot of the times, most people, what they do is they'll say, let me get the website, let me get the logo, let me get the, the headshots, let me get all the things that don't make me money first. Before you actually go into the market and say, what problems are there? How can I solve these problems? And I know that was me. Like I knew, I mean, I had this idea and this picture of I want to help people with trauma. But because of what I had seen, right? And I thought what I saw was what made a good business because I was coming from the outside looking in. I was positioned as a consumer wanting to be a business owner instead of saying how do business owners be. I started with the more complex. What do business owners do? Right? And I'm like, okay, they do this. Okay, let me get a logo. They do that. Let me get that. I don't even remember if I Googled how to start a business or if I just looked at what other people were doing and I say I start my starting point wherever looks like the easiest thing to do. And what I realized over time was I was doing all the non-essential things that were taking a lot of money away from me, and the most essential thing which I should have been doing is going into the marketplace, looking and asking questions, listening, observing, going back to what they did in Numbers when God had delivered the people out of Egypt, delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness. And he said, okay, you're getting ready to take over the promised land that I've given you. You got to go fight for something that I've already given you, and you're going to get it. It's already yours. You're just going to have to fight for it. But before you go fight, take 40 days, survey the land. Come back and ask him, answer these questions that Moses is going to give you. So Moses was doing market research. I never thought to start with something as simple as, do they want what you have? Answer these questions. Can you survive in this industry? Is this what you really want to do? Do you like being in this area? I was just like, no, let's start with the logo. And I had a website launch party. I mean, it was just ridiculousness. And so we make it so much more complicated than it has to be because when you've put out all that money, when you've taken out the small business loan and racked up tens of thousands of dollars and nobody clicks on the website and nobody shows up for the live and nobody buys the thing that you have 500 pieces of or items stocked up there, you're wondering, how the heck did I get to this place? Because you never surveyed the land. You never started with the most simplest basic thing. Do you want what people have? Or do they want what you have to offer? And if not, what do you have to offer what do you have that they actually want to buy? Something simple as that we didn't start with. We just make it way harder than it needs to be. And I think you've done a good job with that, Coach. You've been you started selling from the bottom. So go ahead. I'm going to give it to you.
It's so funny you say that because I remember we was in church, and I'm not sure if you was there that Sunday or you joined in, and Pastor, it was either Pastor Joyce or Pastor James. They was together. They got up and talked about they wanted to start a community of businesses. So basically, they wanted to compile a list of all the businesses in the house, which is a church. And from this list, they wanted to create an ecosystem, which was just dope. Even that was like 2000, and thinking about that now, about how they were fast forward thinking about ecosystem, but that's a story for another day. So as they were saying that, they said, well, stand up if you have your business. And people were just stand up saying what they do. And I said, all right, I had just made this like lopsided cake that came out good. And yeah, mine loved that cake. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm about to start a business. Because I've always been used to selling stuff. I used to sell scarves. I used to sell like the Olive Jesus pins because Ladies Church. I've always sold stuff. And this is like, at 10, I'm like, okay. So I stood up and said, my business name. I came with on the fly, J Soul Cakes. And my mom was like, if you don't sit down, we're gonna have a problem. because she know that, that will be her business too. Because I was, I'd say you got to drive somewhere around at 10. And then, but the good part about it is once I made a decision to start, right after church, Sister Deborah Rains came to me and she said, you got to work on a tagline and some, get some business cards. People, like, I started, that was a decision I made. And she helped me come with a tagline. I made my own business cards. And then after that, my mom put me in programs to help me work on my business skills. Here's the thing about it. When it comes to making a decision, that is sometimes the hardest thing you have to do is just make the decision, because everything else will follow. I think sometimes we make things so difficult, and it is good to get a website. It is good, but have you realized that some people on social media had not had any of that? They were just themselves, and businesses came out of it, and as it came out of it, they became more polished. I think sometimes we try to start polished, and there's nothing wrong with that, but entrepreneurship 10, 20 years ago is very different today. So you could be prepared for everything, and guess what? You're not ready for it. So I think you have to have a mix of preparation, but the biggest thing is the decision. Once you make a decision, things will follow. I am the most jump out and do it person. And I don't do it as much. And I think I need to switch that, because I realize there's certain opportunities I had when I just jumped out versus now I'm a little more calculated. And it's good to be calculated, but sometimes you got to just jump out and do it, because the resources will come, the people will come. The most important thing you have to do is make the decision. Like, make the decision that, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't know how. I may have a little idea, but let me go out and do it. But when you don't even know what people want, like, people will have businesses that nobody wants, or they don't even know who wants it. So it's like you have to really see how marketable your business is. Like, for me, it was a little different because I already knew I was good at food and making dessert and stuff like that. So for me, it was very easy for me to transition into like the baking world. But you know what's so funny? When I introduced like the culinary part to that, it was a smooth transition. When I introduced the private dining, it was a smooth transition. And all these things, I didn't actually know how they would turn out. But my biggest thing is I knew that once I made the decision, everything else will work out. And if it doesn't seem to work out, it's a lesson to use that I can use those same steps in a different business or something else and move on. You cannot take all day to make a decision. Things about champions is they do train, but when it's time to make a switch transition, they know how to move. I think the biggest part about like being a champion or being somebody who's successful is learning how to make moves. Like, we can be so stuck in what does not work that we never give opportunity for does work. Like, it's sometimes people like are so negative about something, like, but you ain't even try it yet. Like, you ain't even try for a good 30 days. You just did it one time and it ain't work out. But what happens is, as you do something more consistently, you start to build up your own faith to realize what seemed impossible or hard to do. Oh, that was kind of easy. Like, making up the bed, like we talked about before. Sometimes it makes you like, oh, I don't have time to make the bed. But once you start getting into small routines like that, it's easy for everything else in your life to become a routine. Success is a routine, right? Successful habits create routines that are, it's like once I start doing it, I already know what to do. So now when it comes to holiday times, I already know right now is time to start promoting January stuff, but also Valentine's Day. Like, that's about to be the promotion for the next week, because I know that as I do business, things become second nature, because once I stood out on faith, now I start to see things for what they are, because I started. But once you like don't start and you try to have everything perfect, things are never going to be perfect. So stop trying to be perfect and just make it happen. And I know people would disagree with me like that, where it's like, oh, we got to have this. I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to be funny, but this 24 years of experience of jumping has caused me to have so many wonderful experiences and opportunities that I will always realize that there's some things you have to just jump into and figure it out as you go along. Because guess what? You only have one life to live. Like, tomorrow's not promised to create the best plan. Just do it and see how you'd be surprised how successful you become by just jumping out and trying it. Because all the provisions will be met. Because guess what? I'm God's favorite child, so He has to provide for me.
I love that about you. To be honest, I in the beginning I was like, oh, it just took a while for me to get to that place, and I could fully say and embrace. I love that, and I wholeheartedly agree
Mm,
that making that decision and just moving quickly is what is going to produce those big results for people. And if you are like me, who was hesitant in every single thing, right? Even if you're quick and you say no and you come back later on, at least you made a decision, right? It is always
mm-hmm.
that place of limbo that causes the delay, and we don't recognize that. And I'm starting to see that you are absolutely 100% right. And don't change, keep doing you, right? Don't let us over here, these slow pokes, slow you down, because when you really decide and you move forward, the provision is there. And also, if you decide and you move forward and you quickly see that this is not going to work, you can quickly get rid of that thing and say, you know what, this failed. All right, on to the next. You know quickly
Mm-hmm.
what does not work. And it just brings me back to this podcast that I listened to from the former CEO of Netflix. And he talked about, he said that the success of Netflix is attributed to the fact that they failed, and they failed fast, that they were not willing to hold on to any idea too
Mm-hmm.
long and say that this idea is going to be the thing that's going to make it or break it. It was in the action that they found out that the idea that they had was the thing that would make it or break it. So
Yeah.
one of their make it ideas was the fact that they stopped having late fees. They saw that Blockbuster, they were holding on to the late fees, and that was their bread and butter. Basically, not the actual, the product that they have or the service that they have. It was the late fees that people were bringing back those tapes and those DVDs late. Right. And before they had the DVDs, they had the VHSs. And if you didn't rewind, you had to pay an extra for the rewind.
Feed
That's how old I am. You know what I'm saying?
it.
I worked at Blockbuster for 2 days. I was like, I can't do this. I'm glad I left. But they recognized that this was their bread and butter. So they were like, let's take their bread and butter away from them and position ourselves accordingly. And so they said, no late fees. Keep it as long as you want for this a subscription amount, and when you return it, you get another one. And they said that was the thing that catapulted them out of the negative $50 million mark into a surplus, right? And so that means negative 50 million. They failed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They
That's a lot of
failed
money.
tremendously, right? It was a big impact to their business, but because they kept going, because they were resilient, they kept pushing, they had the heart of a champion. Like, we're so far in the hole, we got to make this thing work. They were able to do that. And so as entrepreneurs, we have to be willing to adopt that mindset of, I have to fail fast, I have to quickly move through this. As the identity of a champion, you already know that you're going to win. There's something that ET said that I've always I was like wrestle with in the beginning, but now I really get it. He said winners win. That's
Yeah.
exactly what they do. They win. So no matter if they experience a failure or a setback or resistance or opposition, they know the final result and the final outcome is they're going to win. No matter
Yeah.
how many challenges they have to face, no matter how many opposition they have to go up against, they're going to win. And so adopting the heart of a champion says, one, I'm going to win, right? But two, I'm going to have some type of conflict. You cannot be a champion without conflict. And I think that's what people are expecting to do when they come into the marketplace and they have this phenomenally beautiful idea. They're like, this is going to be the $1 million idea. And when it does not pan out, they're done. And it's just like, are you a champion or not? Are you an entrepreneur or not? Because one bad idea does not make or break an entrepreneur. They say,
Yeah.
failure pile, what's next?
That's good. I know. At one point, I was starting to think that I was the problem on these jobs because I said, somebody said, "Yeah, you just." I said, "Well, that whole side they took when they were talking to me." And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not like you who wanted to stay at the job for all these years and you're just making it with retirement money. I don't want that for myself. Um, and I think too, I had to realize that, yo, fam, like, I don't want that life for myself. So I think when you're really a visionary, you have to start thinking about legacy over fame. The Bible talks about a good name is more desirable than riches. You know, I think with just being a leader or entrepreneur, that you got to start thinking about, what does your name mean? So when I would go in different spaces, especially in like education, things like that, what does my name mean to this right here? And I've always been a big fan of integrity. Like money is great, but integrity always matters. So when it comes to like different jobs I'm on, I'm always looking at, how can I be integral? Like, what does my name mean? And I think too, like, so like I wasn't raised with my dad, so like, when you have a last name, it carries weight. But for me, I don't know the lineage of my family like that when it comes to my last name. But I think, like, back in the day, like, names really meant something, like especially if you look at old shows, when it came to like the bastard child who didn't have the same last name, like it meant something when you knew the name that you carry, because it carried weight. Like if you look at Bridgerton, like, that show, or a show like that, where they said, oh, you're so and so, oh, that family comes from this, or if you have this, that family comes from that. So when you start thinking about like legacy of what you represent, you start to think more about, like, what do I want my name to mean? When people hear my name or they hear about me, what do you want to be said? Because the thing about it too, when you're known for good stuff, when someone says something negative, it's like, no, that's not what this person is known for. So maybe I didn't have this situation with them, but this person is known for X, Y, and Z. So I always wanted to make sure that my name is most important. When people say something, and I know people say, oh, people talk, they say what they want. I said, but no, some things are said because of us. What are your mannerisms? What do you get off? And I always wanted to make sure, especially with working with young people, it's really taught me to always value my reputation, because reputation means everything in my line of work. Because if your reputation like sucks, you're known for that. Like, one thing I had to get away from was being late, because I didn't want to be known as person, his food good, but he late, right? So what happens is you have to really be mindful about, what do you want to be known as? Like, for me, reputation has always been everything. The legacy of my name is so important. So when people think about Chef J, oh, how do I want them to really acknowledge the memory of me? Like, how do I want people to know who I am? And I think too, the more I start to realize that legacy means everything, like, a good name is so more desirable than riches, because guess what? A good name is associated with the good stuff already. So when you start defining your why for success, it aligns with lasting values. You're not just saying your why just because of why you do business, but these are lasting values that even when you leave, these values will be upheld. When you think about certain names, you can see what oh, this person was known for this. Their whole family is this, and I think too, when you're defining your why, you want to create a vision for how you want to be remembered. Like, how do you want to, when you leave people's life, or you leave that, how do you want them to remember you? Like, when I have a dining experience, I'm really mindful of how I want people to leave the place. Like, I love when I get reviews from people or text messages like, Jay, you really, you made my day so special, or X, Y, and Z. And I think the biggest part about that too, going into serving, you want to make sure you seek opportunities to mentor others or pass down knowledge. Like, for me, I don't have any kids, so my mentees are those who I pass down knowledge into. So I think too, the thing about mentorship, why it's so important, I've been in a lot of mentor situations where it's not um it's a one-sided thing, right? So make sure, like, for me as a mentor, I try to make sure that I give a lot of value to who I'm giving information to, because sometimes um mentorship can become, I don't want to say possessive, but abusive, right? So when you're really getting into these situations, you want to make sure, what kind of mentor do I want to be? Like, I'm always mindful of that when it comes to my mentees. I'm like, hey, what things can I work on myself? Because I want to make sure that I'm not just giving mentorship through my verbiage, but my life is living that same situation. So that's why we talked about your heart posture, because when you start to monitor your heart on a daily basis, you start to see that, wait, hold on now. If I'm monitoring my heart, right, and my actions, was my yesterday a good representation of what my tomorrow to become? So the reason why it's so important to daily reflect on your life is, you want to make sure that your life give glories to God. You want to make sure your life is an example, that it changes people, that when they think about you or when they're around you, they just feel a difference. right? That's what it's about. What do people feel when they're around you? They see a different, do they get inspired? Do they feel challenged? Because I think that's the biggest part about living, is really about who am I meant to serve and how do I display my servitude. I want to make sure that I'm on display for the things that are like what the Bible says, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are pure. I want to make sure that my output is showing, just really is always giving glory to God, because that's what it's about for me. Like, by my lifestyle, what am I showing other people? Am I being an example? And I think sometimes when, like, I'm used to kind of being an example, so for me, I really just try to monitor my words, because I realize too, like, sometimes we can say things that be off the wall, and they're like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. No, you did. You meditated on that. So I try to make sure that with even my interactions, that I'm monitoring how I communicate with people, because I want to make sure my reputation is that you always got something good to say. You always so positive. You always doing this, and I love that. Like, you always doing something different. I'd rather say that than like, I can't stand Josh. Like, like, I don't want that. He's so negative. I always want to get off the phone with him because he just negative Nancy. So when it comes to your output, it's really important to really monitor what you're doing, what you're saying, because you're made to be a champion, but your actions have to align with that.
Ooh, you're made to be a champion, but your actions have to align with that. That is so good. I need to come back to the name thing, because that hit deep. Where back in the day, usually businesses were named after, the business owner. Like, I think about Hilton Hotels, Marriott Hotels, Procter and Gamble. These are people's last names. It's only now, like in this last decade or so, that people are now like the Netflix and the Ubers and all of that, right? But everything was basically based on the last name. And so your reputation, like even with Hilton and Marriott,
Mhm.
they've been around for a while, quite a while. These are staples in their particular field, right? And
Yeah.
but we're carrying on somebody's name. So even when Paris Hilton came on the scene in the beginning, how she was operating, it was like, you cannot be you the black sheep of the Hiltons, right? Even though it's just like we didn't even know the Hilton family before. We just assumed, because we haven't seen them in the public eye, that everything was hunky dory or whatever. But now, I'm even noticing that her reputation is shifting
Oh
more
yeah.
to match what the company represents, right? But the company is based and founded in family, and you're
Mhm.
carrying that legacy on for the next generation and the next generation after that and the next after that. And we don't think about that as we're building our businesses. A lot of the time we're so focused on the here and now, which is how many sales can I get, how much money can I get, that we don't position ourselves further into the future, that if we establish this great reputation now, if we
Mhm.
built a great foundation now, we won't have to worry about Hilton, regardless of the fact that Airbnb came and took a good chunk of the industry. They not worried. They
Mhm.
ain't bothered. It ain't moving them. They still making money. People still booking at the Hilton Hotel. We still
Mhm.
do Airbnb and Hilton. If you
Yeah.
know what I mean, if we don't have the time, like, this is still happening. And so we have to start positioning ourselves further into the future by looking at the legacy. I do appreciate you bringing it home, because I didn't think about it in the manner of your reputation is establishing your legacy for tomorrow, right? Your reputation is in your name, and your name right now is represented by your business. So you
Mhm.
don't have to, your business doesn't have to be, like Chef J. Well, Chef J's Encounters. What's your business name
Oh, the
now?
Chef J experience and experiences in.
Experience. You don't have to have your
Yeah.
name on there,
Yeah,
as
you
mine
already know vibes.
is. Right? Or mine is Natalie Lee Martin Enterprises, and I do my DBA NLM. But you don't have to have a name per se. Your business name, whatever the business name is going to precede you if you're doing business great or if you're not doing business great. Because you can have a good or a bad reputation. And
Mhm.
one of them will ensure that you have more sales in the future, and another will cause your business to die and die quickly. So what is it that you know what I mean? what foundation do you need to lay down now so that you're ensuring longevity when, because
That's
sometimes we'll
good.
start a business in the middle of the pandemic where the economy is not doing what it's supposed to do, or we'll start a business in the middle of a need that we have and the money ain't flowing like it should. How are we not thinking about today and focus more on tomorrow so that we can build the systems today to get to that place where even in the midst of a famine, even in the midst of a pandemic, we can still have a source of income, or at least have something, a system built up that we can acquire a new source of income. We can
Yeah.
focus on something different if we already have the systems already in place through our good reputation. So yeah, I definitely had to talk about that name piece. That was so pivotal for me right now.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think just to wrap it up, uh, just going into 2025 and creating that champion blueprint for your life. Like write your why down, define why you're doing business or why you want to do this task. Set small goals, cultivate the mindset of gratitude. Always focus on a positive outcome. Everything always gotta be negative. And I think too, I was having a conversation earlier today, one of my friends, and they had a situation going on where it's like it's a negative one, but they go back to it so easily because they saw their parents go through that. And I said, yo, like, you don't want better for that. And then they defended that. And I'm like, yo, do you realize that you're creating the same process your parents are doing? You're entering that same thing because guess what? That's second nature. Negativity does not have to be second nature. Winning can be second nature to you. It's always good to think about that part. Also, remember to always you always got to serve. Like come from a place of serving because you want to make sure that whatever you have going on, that you're always quick to check yourself, make sure your heart posture is right when you're doing stuff with business. Know your why and remember, hey, as I grow into success, I'll never forget what it means to check my heart. Like have that same mindset. Like I want to make sure that whatever level I'm going through, I'm still the same Josh. Yeah, so it's so funny. Shanique just commented started like queen on my Instagram page, and she's so silly. But one thing I love about Shanique, since she's on a live, is I met Shanique in 2007 or 2016 actually. I was one of her students, and the thing I remember about her um as a teacher, I always connected with her because she was always a real person, right? Shanique will always be Shanique. Like she just started like queen now. She got all these doggone followers on Instagram and TikTok. But what I love about her is she made a decision when she moved to Atlanta that she said, hey, I'm gonna start doing locks and wicks. And she started just from teaching, left teaching, retired early, and now she has such a successful business. But guess what? She's still the same person. And I think sometimes when we go through success, our personality changes. We're not the same person we used to be. There are things about us that are just really just like, oh, they so different now. I never want that to be the case. Like, yes, I will be a different social status, but I would never be so different where I'm not just a person. And I think that's the thing I appreciate about people in my circle, that as we elevate and grow, we're still us. And I think that's the part. Always examine your heart to make sure that your heart posture is always going to be one that is a pleasant reputation, that when people think of you, they know that it's going to be quality or whatever you want it to be. And so that's it for this week, guys. So remember to just like and shut. Like if you're looking for coaching, reach out to one of us. We're always down to help out. Closed mouths will get fed. Going into a new year, you want to realize the posture that you're coming from, because you never want to be in a place where you're like, oh, how do I get out of this, when you always had help all along. What God has for you will always be for you, but it's time to really grow and go into the next season of your life. We're here to help. How do you want this year to end? We still got about 2 weeks of this year. So you can still finish strong and you can start anew. Whatever didn't go right at the beginning of the year, the last 11 months, it can change today for you. All right. So have a wonderful week on purpose. Anything else to add, Natalie? All right, we out, fam.